Hey, welcome to episode 157 of Decentralized Revolution, the Mises Caucus podcast. I'm Aaron Harris, down here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Across the state, Nate Thurston, how are you?
Doing great, Aaron. It's been a few weeks since we've both been on here, so I'm happy to be back.
I know our redundancy plan of you coming on as the co-host has worked out perfectly because there's always a crisis or something coming up in one household or another. Last week's episode was really great. It was with Raphael Jacobi, who is an attorney for the Samurai Wallet guys. And if you don't know about that case, which I didn't know much about that case, he really walks through it. And we also talk about kind of the potential alliance between Bitcoin people and the LP and the Mises Caucus, which I really want you guys to check that out, episode 156. Tonight, I'm sure we're going to get into talking about a different kind of alliance or different kind of alliances. Our guest, Jim Ostrowski, has some ideas as far as who the LP can work with to try to grow our numbers. And it's important to know what Jim thinks about this stuff because Jim is running for LNC chair. So Jim, welcome. Tell us why you are crazy enough to want to get involved with the Libertarian National Committee.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. So, it wasn't something I was dreaming about when I was a boy. And even though I've been in politics for so long, if I told you how long, you wouldn't believe it. But it's true because I grew up in a political family. I never really thought about being chair of the LP, but I've been working on this concept, been in the liberty movement since like 1979, libertarian movement. I call it the liberty movement sometimes. And I been involved in every conceivable kind of political activity you could possibly imagine in every conceivable party. I've been a candidate, a campaign manager, a campaign attorney, an election attorney, a volunteer, a signature gatherer. And after a couple of decades of this, I started to think about we're not really accomplishing anything. And I don't just mean the LP, I mean the Libertarian Republican movement, which I was involved in for quite a few years. So I wrote a book, it was around the time of the Tea Party movement. I wrote a book called Direct Citizen Action. And I said, there's an alternative to politics, which is direct action, which we can get into because I know it's a term that is a little confusing. It's a term of art. It requires some explanation. And I've been sort of banging away at this idea for years on the side of my law practice and writing books. And hadn't made too much progress. But at some point, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I had this kind of eureka moment where I realized, maybe I should pitch this to the Libertarian Party because even though direct action is kind of the opposite of politics, the politics isn't working too well for the LP. And I just said, let me start pitching this idea. So I'll try to keep this short. I started pitching the idea and I was getting some feedback. I know I spoke to the Hawaii Libertarian Party. The New York Libertarian Party has to listen to me because I'm their attorney and I know all the people there, but not getting a lot of reaction. So I said, there was a vacancy. Angela decided to leave. And I said, if maybe I'll just run for chair and then they'll kind of have to hear my argument. Well, that didn't work out too well because I remember being on that long conference call where a new chair was elected, the selection process. I don't want to criticize the selection process, but there wasn't really much of one. So I never even got a chance to speak on that phone call. But I, just a couple months ago, I said, well, I can run for chair in 26, and I decided to do it, really just to be heard, just to try to be heard on my strategic ideas. But then what happens in life is the idea started to grow on me, and I really kind of got excited about it. So I'm kind of into it, and but that's basically why I'm running. I put some ideas out there which we can talk about that I think are pretty interesting, and that's basically why I decided to run.
Yeah, so you said, you brought up the direct citizen action idea, and I'm curious about that. It's important enough that you're wanting to run and wanting to talk to people about it. So could you explain that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so politics, as I see it, has four elements: voting, supporting candidates, litigation in court, and lobbying legislatures. All these things are indirect action because you're trying to get somebody else to do something, and that's intrinsically hard. And the system is rigged. I've written a bunch of books on this. I could talk about it at length. But the system is basically rigged against anybody who's trying to change things for the general good, like a populist type movement or a libertarian movement. So the direct action is the opposite. So in direct action, you're actually doing things yourself to not only improve your life, but to advance liberty. So for example, I think the easiest example and the best example is voting with your feet. So I live in New York, which is the least free state. If I move to New Hampshire or Florida or Tennessee, just by my personal choice, I have elected a new government. I have reduced my taxes drastically, my cost of living, my right to bear arms has increased. So voting with your feet to me would be the classic form of direct action. And I've said many times that I think the Free State Project is the single best idea that the liberty movement ever had. So one of the things I would do if I was chair is I would sort of expand that. I have, and all these ideas we could talk about at length, but try to keep it short because I have a big mouth as a trial lawyer. I can talk a blue streak. So I want to expand the concept of voting with your feet. So I have already developed an algorithm to rank all 3,000 counties. It's really just a question of a couple of bucks and maybe some expertise and some marketing and some computer people. And I believe the Libertarian Party has vast resources that are really being underutilized. So if we could put this app out, 5 to 10% of Americans are always moving or thinking about moving. Americans like to move. It's in our culture. If we could encourage people to actually have proper data about where to move, and to move from less free counties, because you really don't move to a state, you move to a county. That's why I think we need a county app. If we could encourage people to move from, big government counties to smaller government counties, that increases their liberty, but it also starves the beast of the political machine in those big county areas and reduces their power over their own citizens. And maybe sends a message to them, hey, we're losing our population. We need to change. So that would be one of the examples of direct action. Other examples are pulling your kids out of government school. There's a lot of talk in the movement about school choice. And in my view is we already have school choice. You can pull your kids out of government school. And I know there's resistance to that, but it's one of the few areas where statistically, when I wrote a book called Government Schools Are Bad for Your Kids, I think it was 2009, 90% of K through 12 students were going to a government school. And when I checked it just recently, it was in the high 80s. It had gone down several percentage points. So that's one of the few areas, in my view, where the liberty movement has had some success. It's the move towards homeschooling primarily, and they might not be motivated by reading Murray Rothbard, but they are doing something that's libertarian. So that would be another example. And I have other examples. I put out a flyer. I listed 5 things: jury activism, teaching economics, and voting with your health. I think those 5 examples, there's about 15 of them, but in a political campaign, you have to sort of have a short list of priorities.
So you mentioned the LP having underused resources and capabilities, and that's been one of the most frustrating things about my time in the LP too. It's been about almost 15 years now, is just so much is it's a leading question. So,
Yeah.
But
Sure.
so much time is spent on procedure and things like that. It's just sort of mind numbing, and it's like turning an ocean liner around. And
Yeah.
So what are the unused resources or opportunities, and what do you see are the biggest obstacles? Let's say, okay, you do get elected, maybe you have a mixed board, maybe it's not, a couple hostile people, a couple indifferent, a few people for you. Like, how do you turn that around to then do the things you think the LP is capable of?
Well, one of the things I'm going to say, and I'm obviously planning to go to the convention in Grand Rapids, I'm going to make it very clear that if the delegates don't agree with my strategic ideas, please vote against me, because I don't want to, I have other things to do. I've got 7 books outlined that haven't been written yet, on top of the 13 I've already published. If people don't agree with these ideas, they shouldn't vote for me. But sure, there's going to be some opposition. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do politics. I just think that we need to divert resources away from political activity, which, let's face it, we've been at 1% for 50 years. I was an elector for Ed Clark in 1980, and I know how many votes he got, because I'm an election stat freak. He got about 1 million votes, and we got 600,000 last time. So we need to put less or fewer resources into politics and divert some of that into direct action, such as, developing an app. I don't know what the budget is, 10, 20 grand. I know the LP's not wealthy. I know there's been apparently a reduction in fundraising, but there's surely enough money to do an app which could revolutionize the process of people moving within the United States. Because, people are still saying, oh, I'm going to move to Texas, or I'm going to move to South Carolina. It's like, can you just look at the data? That's not necessarily the place to go. And as I said, nobody moves to a state, they move to a county. Yeah. So a little bit of diversion of resources would create, I think, a tremendous amount of publicity and momentum, and people would start to say, wow, what is this party that's giving us this information we've never had before? These are the freest counties. I think that these direct action ideas would bring in more people and bring in more money. So we wouldn't really have less money to spend on elections. We'd maybe double or triple our budget, and we could, I'm afraid to say it, have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah, well, and one thing, the reason fundraising for the LP has cratered over the past couple of years is they got rid of a chair who had a plan. Now they have no plan. I've gotten emails from the LNC recently, the current chair. It's like, oh, in 10 years, we want to be as big as Republicans and Democrats. And there's nothing in the emails or in anything I've ever heard him say that tells us how we get from here to there, and how we can do that in 10 years where we haven't made it half that distance in 50 years. So like that, to me, is the whole point of like the Mises Caucus, was like looking at the record and saying, hey, yeah, fine, we've gotten lots of ballot access. We've even gotten an electoral vote or two. We've gotten several million votes over the years, but that's kind of it. And so our focus on Project Decentralized Revolution, which is liberty culture, which is part of, I think, what you're talking about, is just educating people about liberty, how to be around more liberty-minded people, and then also the coalitions with other liberty-minded groups and individuals. And then, our focus has been on, training and recruiting local candidates for school board races and stuff like that. The LP had taken that on, made it its official strategy. And then when they kicked Angela out, that's gone. So,
I've read some of the emails from National. I read your plan a number of months ago, and I looked at it. I looked at it again tonight. One of the things I want to say is that I'm not into. I'm very serious about my role in the liberty movement. I've devoted much of my life to it. I'm not interested in turf fights, personalities, and egos, and all that stuff. And I'm going to try like hell not to run a negative campaign. I don't know the current chair. I don't know that much about his regime. And I'm not going to like trash the guy. And I know there's some other candidates. I'm vaguely aware of their platforms. But I just, like you said, I mean, there's no new ideas. There's just, I mean, there's some rhetoric. I have put out concrete idea. I actually started out with one page, but the one page had a lot. I'm looking at it right now. Had like 8-9 different ideas on it. I've since added a Second Amendment platform. Now, I'm a Second Amendment attorney. I've written 2 books on the Second Amendment. I think, to me, the right to bear arms is the most important issue in history, period. I put out a little flyer. I got 3 concrete issues on that one. And then I put out sort of a political strategy. I think I have 4 ideas on that. So not that counting matters, but I think they're pretty interesting ideas. So I put out about 15 ideas for change. And all I can say is let's put it this way. If you're a delegate and you want to vote for somebody, ask them what specific ideas for real change they have that haven't been tried in the last 50 years, because I don't think barely any of mine have been tried. Like, I think in your plan, you talk about single issue coalitions. So I gave a speech recently at the Hudson Valley LP that in the light of the Charlie Kirk assassination and several other acts of violence, and we've had a spate of violence in the last few days, which is really disgusting. We need some radical changes, and we need a school exit project and I said, we can align with Turning Point. We could align with Moms for Liberty to lead a withdrawal from the schools, because, and this is where there's a connection between direct action and politics, where I seem to be like, and I've had some discussions with people, oh no, we have to do the politics. Well, without the direct action that I'm talking about, such as teaching economics and pulling kids out of the schools, look, we manufacture libertarians a dozen at a time. The government schools are manufacturing left progressive statists, millions each year. We can't keep up. If we don't pull our kids out, this was the fatal mistake in American history that led to everything else. The government is controlling education. It's so ridiculous. If we don't pull our kids out, and there's some momentum already we can build on, we're never going to get that vote up from 1% to 2%. But if we start to, we could start to get that vote up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%, maybe even win a few elections here and there.
Yeah, I like that. So I was wondering, like, why do you think it's so tough to get people to agree to take these direct action steps as opposed to just doing politics? Is it like out of laziness, or is it out of ideology, or what? You know, what's the deal? It's cool to talk about. It's tough to actually get people to take that step in their lives. You know,
you're right, and the reason I jumped in on this with the LP, I did it on election night. I think I did it in a podcast with Dwayne Whitmer, who's the chair of the New York party. I said, 600,000 votes. I mean, this is the time, people, to change. But why? Well, let's face it, politics is fun. I bet, I mean, my father won a judicial election in a large district when I was 18. We partied all night. you get that final result. There's like, with direct action, it's kind of like there's no Super Bowl. It's like just constantly pulling people out. And yes, we need to create metrics. And frankly, we need to attack weak school districts. When one of them goes out of business or consolidates, have a big victory party, create our own Super Bowl. But politics is fun. It's entertaining. It's like, that's what the Republicans and Democrats are doing. So we're like them. It's what I like to say is the Republicans are in the election business. The Democrats are in the election business. We're in the liberty business, folks. And so we do have to change. There are these reasons why we have to make it fun. We have to make it entertaining. Believe me, every time I have any sort of an event, there's usually adult beverages served. Things I once had in Buffalo, an Irish wake for the Buffalo political class after a bunch of local politicians lost. We had a coffin. We had the photos of the people. It was hysterical. We had the local media there. We had a fake, I won't get into that, but we had another sort of spoof event when there was the politicians are trying to bring Bass Pro onto the waterfront, and we just made it into a fun event. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we just, all I can say is 50 years of doing the same thing. We're at 1%. We got fewer votes than Ed Clark did. We're not going in the right direction. And, one of the ideas I've thrown out is why not have an international, Libertarian Strategy Conference? And I want to have it in Nashville, Tennessee. Why Nashville, Tennessee? Well, just ranked out by Fraser as the second freest economy in the United States, to New Hampshire, of course. But one of the things I've talked about, and I'm going to do a memo on this, be my page 4. I'm trying to keep it short. Is if you look at where we've been strong, it's in the rural areas and the mountain areas and among farmers. And what has the party done to reward those people, or thank those people? I can't think of a single thing. So, using military strategy, when you're outnumbered, you've got to concentrate your forces. So why not, not to get into this whole controversy, but why not? So when our strongest voting areas are socially conservative, what did the party do a few years ago before Angela came in? They sort of drifted to the left. And, people want to argue, but they drifted to the left. Everybody knows this on a wide range of issues. That's not what we should be doing. To reinforce our strength among rural voters. I'm not saying we should shift our positions to satisfy. I'm saying we should sort of talk to them and try to improve their lives. I'm going to put out, I'm a bit of a policy wonk. I'm going to put out a platform on how to help the farmers in the United States, because they are struggling. Certainly the solar, you probably don't know this, but New York State upstate is a big farming area. Wyoming County, which is just the next county over, they say they have more dairy cows than people. You drive by these beautiful country highways, and they're replacing farms with these solar farms. It's just these windmills, and it's all subsidized, BS. So we need to aggressively change our strategy, think strategically, do the politics better. We need to run fewer candidates. I know your memo mentioned running the sheriffs. To me, sheriffs should be a priority, because one of the few, leaving aside attorneys general, the sheriffs are really the only elected cops. And if you get a sheriff, we tried to recruit some sheriffs in New York right before the lockdown, and then the lockdown came and it all fell apart. To not enforce some of these gun laws, because like prosecutors, sheriffs have prosecutorial enforcement discretion. So if we could win some sheriff, target some small rural county sheriff's races and put some resources into there instead of wasting the money on just, pie in the sky type races elsewhere. Those are the types of things, those are the types of ideas I'm bringing to the table. I want to shake everything up and try
Yeah.
new stuff.
Well, you mentioned, the sort of the leftward shift of the messaging of the LP kind of in the pre-Reno takeover. And there's been a little bit of that creep back in the last several months
Yeah.
since they deposed Angela. But yeah, I mean, you want to recruit to liberty adjacent people, but occasionally like, oh, let's put a quote from the Church of Satan on the LP Twitter page or something like that,
Yeah.
or the trans Maoist flag or something like that. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's kind of dumb.
Because we're not, the left isn't going to vote for us. I think
Right.
Murray Rothbard tried to work with the left in the 60s. I mean, I was on the left. So,
Yeah.
but, and I've tried to work with the left many times, and I'm still willing to work with the left. But, I haven't had a rational conversation with a hardcore leftist in like 40, 50 years in politics.
Yeah.
So why focus on that direction when we could be focusing on other directions where we're more likely to pick up recruits like the rural voters?
Yeah, as far as recruiting, you're not going to go get many, if any, leftists. But like, the Rage Against the War Machine rally that Angela and the LP helped do a couple of years ago, like that's when you get with the few principled Green Party people and the other people on the left who are anti-war, you work with them on that single issue or on drug legalization or something like that. And then, but to market to them, probably not going to get them. So, rural and mountain people, you mentioned the Second Amendment, which again, it's culture. So like, my wife grew up in Staten Island. All of my grandparents are from Eastern Kentucky and East Tennessee. So like naturally our attitudes toward guns are very different. What's the state of the Second Amendment movement, larger, that, divorce from politics, where are they at politically and how do we appeal to them? Because that's a single tangible issue that I think is the gateway to reaching the rural and mountain and ex-urban voters that you're talking about.
Yeah. So the Republican Party pretends to be for the right to bear arms, but when push comes to shove, they have a few Supreme Court decisions which sound okay, and then you read them, and it really doesn't turn out that well. So the Bruin case I mentioned in footnote 4, because I had a case, Libertarian Party v. Cuomo, which I lost, but Clarence Thomas said that we were actually right on that issue. But right after that, Hochul in New York passed a bunch of laws, and in that now the effective right to bear arms in New York is worse than it was before Bruin, and Bruin was designed to liberalize the gun laws in New York. So there's some victories at the state level with constitutional carry, which we should support, but we're not winning the battle of the internet. We're not winning young people. The media is against us, and it's because we're not educating people on the purpose of the Second Amendment, which is, and I've written 2 books on this, which is to deter tyranny. So one of the things I'm going to recommend, I'm going to write up a short, basically program of maybe a half an hour with a half an hour Q&A, and we can start teaching the Libertarian Party, its candidates, its volunteers, its local committees, can actually start teaching people about the Second Amendment. Because once you understand that the Second Amendment, the purpose of it is to deter tyranny and to allow the public to exercise their sovereignty over the government. Now you can say, okay, if that's the purpose, what's the evidence? Well, the evidence is overwhelming that it works. Not perfectly. You're not going to use guns to cut taxes by 2%. But I put all this data out there. I actually have a global map that my student intern's working on now. And you know, look, I mean, if I'm chair, I mean, all my ideas are going to be the Libertarian Party's ideas. They're all ready to go and ready to package. But if we could educate people on the purpose of the Second Amendment, there actually is no argument. I'll try to cut this a little short. So I've actually argued in court in the Second Circuit and the Fourth Department Appellate Division in New York. I drive these judges crazy. And I say, you know, the purpose of the Second Amendment is to deter government tyranny. And you know what the judges say, and you know what the opposing attorney says, and you know what they say in their briefs, and you know what the court's decisions say about it in their decision? Nothing. And that's the Freudian slip. That's the dog that didn't bark. They have no answer to this. The empirical evidence is, I have a book that we put out exposing the two big lies of the gun control movement. We actually ranked every country in the world by their level of violence, overall violence. First time it's ever been done. The United States is 27th most peaceful country. So we've been lied to about everything, and the Republican Party is incredibly weak about explaining why we need a Second Amendment. So specifically, though, I think Tennessee is on the bubble. Tennessee's a critical state, and I would go down there as Libertarian Party chair, work with the state committee and the county committees down there, and go to every state legislator and educate them about the purpose of the Second Amendment. If we could get constitutional carry passed, they claim they have it, but the gun people down there say not really. And work on those states that are on the bubble. There's a bunch of states, and some of them are surprisingly, I can't think of them, but there's a couple of Democratic states that are actually on the bubble on this, and push. That's one of the issues. I want to work with Massey. Massey, as I understand it, is trying to pass a federal bill. I know some of the Federalists will chafe at this. I do not, because I think the Second Amendment is the most important issue. And the 14th Amendment does give Congress the power to enact a law like this. Massey's trying to get federal constitutional carry. We should work with him. We should work with the states. That's more on lobbying. And as lobbying is rigged, I know, but I'm fanatic is the prisoner of a single idea. I don't preclude lobbying. I'm simply saying we need to use direct action, and direct action will make political action more efficient. So it's really a win-win. There's no real loss there.
I want to go back just a second. As somebody who's been around a long time, there's a question that I have my own theories on, but as someone who's got even more perspective on things, what happened to the Tea Party movement?
Wow, that is such, I mean, can I come back tomorrow night? Because, the Tea Party movement was started by Ron Paul.
Yeah, I
was in it. I had the first event in Buffalo. And so basically, long story short, it got co-opted. The original Tea Party movement was really against the political establishment. It was kind of like, the early version of MAGA. It was basically against all the politicians. But eventually got co-opted by the Republican Party. And essentially, and when that happened, I actually ran a Tea Party candidate for Congress. And the Republicans had a safe congressional seat. It was gerrymandered for Tom Reynolds, who was like number 3 in the House. And he's now a lobbyist, replaced by his protege. I won't even mention the guy's name. We ran a third party, Tea Party guy, happened to have $3 million, which was helpful. And we cost the Republicans this safe congressional seat. Unfortunately, the lady who won for the Democrats was named Kathy Hochul. Now, she never even sends me a Christmas card for helping to give her a congressional seat. But basically, long story short, it got co-opted by the Republican Party, and then it was like giving Samson a haircut. It lost its purpose, and I got out of it very quickly. Very disappointing. The Republican Party is. We tried. The Libertarians tried to work. I've been. People say, "Why don't you work with the Republican Party?" I say, like, is 25 years not enough?
Yeah.
Because some of us got tired with after the split in the party back in the 80s. The vote totals went down, and some of us said, well, let's see if we can pursue libertarian ideas within the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Well, long story short, ever heard of Ron Paul?
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest candidate of all time, like the Thomas Jefferson of his era. And I think I calculated once that he got 11% of the vote in I think it was the second time he ran, where he was a little stronger, a little better funded. And he got treated like such crap by the GOP. So I think it's clear that the Republican Party is essentially, you never like to say never. And I'm a pragmatist when it comes to strategy. Apparently that's a dirty word and some of the podcasts. But to me, strategy is a pragmatic art. So yeah, I think the Republican Party's the second Trump term is failing. I say unfortunately because I live here. I've got kids. I'm married, and I wish things were going better, but it's not. So in his kind of a sad way, it gives the LP actually more impetus for the future, because we can't go back to the Biden. I mean, definitely one of the top five, one of the bottom five presidents ever, maybe bottom seven. So many bad presidents.
Yeah.
So the Republican Party is basically useless. So we're, really, as far as saving the country, I hate to exaggerate, but we're the only game in town at this point.
Yeah, to have a separate foothold, some ballot access, an organization that's not beholden to either party is the only way you don't get it co-opted. Because if something is powerful and as good as the Ron Paul revolution, it took them a while to figure out how to subsume that into the Republican Party, but they figured it out. They, broke their own rules at convention and stuff like that, and were able to kind of use the judo and basically run out the clock. And Ron decided to semi-retire, and that was that. So yeah, I mean, I think that going into either party is pretty much doomed to failure. I mean, what we're facing as libertarians is, not again, it's no easy road by any stretch, which is why I think your emphasis on it, the Mises Caucus emphasis on trying things different than what the LP has tried and failed at over the last 52 years or whatever. Yeah. So Nate, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, we were talking about sort of the Trump presidency failing, and that, I guess I won't write it off just yet. We're in the first year, but I've definitely been more unhappy with a lot of things than I planned on being unhappy with. And I was just sort of wondering how you think we can make connections with those Republicans. Do you think it's the Second Amendment is the best thing? Is it gun rights? Is that the best thing? Or can we, is there a way we could convince them that government spending is bad? Like they said like a year ago, was bad. Like, how do you connect with those people and have the Libertarian Party actually get some benefit out of how this is going instead of it being a negative?
Well, I think the GOP political class is hopeless. The problem with, but I think the rank and file, there might be some hope there through the ideas that I've talked about. But the problem with it's important to understand that the GOP is supposed to be. I mean, we know the Democrats are the party of government. Is there any secret about this? They like the government, and they make it bigger. I just read something that when Democrats are in the White House, government grows by 15% per term. When the Republicans are in the White House, it grows 5% per term. But that makes my point. The GOP is supposed to be the party of the private sector. It's supposed to be the party of small government. It's supposed to be the party of the free market. The problem is, if you look at the people who run it, and I analyzed McConnell and McCarthy, I know they're sort of they've faded away or fading away. If you look at these people, and these are the same people who I see in Buffalo politics, they've basically been in politics since college, and they've been in the government since college. So we're asking these people who've been in the government to be anti-government, and it never really works. And they get elected by compromising. They get elected to pandering to the progressive majority of Americans, and by progressive I mean government's solution to all your problems. I don't mean leftist. So I wrote a book on it, but I don't want to assume that people understand that definition. So they already know how to log roll. They know they have to appeal to special interests. They know they have to pander to the progressive American people who we unfortunately we haven't taught economics to. And so really the GOP political class is hopeless. But I think by emphasizing this massive withdrawal from the government schools, by teaching about the Second Amendment and some of the other ideas I have, the voting with your health, getting out, it's absolutely amazing. I just started walking about 5 years ago, really just to lose weight because I was getting too old to run. But when you look up the health benefits of walking, there's about 25 of them. I couldn't fit them on a flyer. We can appeal to lots of people with these ideas, the jury education, and the other ideas that I've talked about, the teaching economics. How can you vote if you don't understand economics? I mean, and the colleges and the high schools, the government schools aren't teaching it. The economics they teach in college is often Keynesian or even monetarist or something that's sort of so complicated and mathematical it's not useful. But we need to get out, since nobody else is teaching economics, we should teach economics. Now, I happen to have written a 30-minute course, which is basically 30 minutes of a lecture and 30 minutes Q&A. Our candidates, this is where we can combine elections with direct action. Our candidates, while you're campaigning, you might as well teach some economics and then, have some cookies and coffee and answer some questions. It's just 5 lessons. It's a playoff of Economics in One Lesson by Hazlitt. It's 5 economics in 5 lessons. And it's sort of just the 5 things that a citizen should know in order to vote. How are we going to get more than 1 or 2% if we're preaching to people who don't understand economics? And I don't see any other solution but to start teaching it. And we have, a large organization. I don't know how many active counties we have. There's 3,000 in the country. I'm assuming we have maybe 1,500 active parties, maybe more. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of counties. That's a lot of people we can reach in the course of a year. And it's not really that hard. And we're doing stuff anyway. We're running candidates anyway. We might as well combine this. You could also teach the Second Amendment in a half an hour. It's, I could teach somebody, I could explain to somebody the Second Amendment in a long elevator ride. It's not, and if you had more time, you can go into more details. The basic theory, the facts that, look, just one factoid. I don't think too many people are aware that if you study where refugees come from to the United States has by far the most guns per capita. Everybody knows this. It's no dispute. If you look at the countries where people are coming from into the United States, I'm talking real refugees, not economic refugees, they're all low gun ownership countries. To me, that's a really powerful statistic. When I throw this out to the left, they really go crazy and they don't know how to answer. Bringing some basic research to these points, I think those are the main things we need to do to attract people from not just the Republican Party, but from the other parties as well.
Yeah, while you're going through that, it just kind of had me wondering, like, if you, I've seen kind of 2 different arguments on what the LP is supposed to be. Some people say, well, this is just a vehicle for winning elections. It's a political vehicle for winning elections. And then other people want to use it as a vehicle for pushing libertarianism. Both of those things are really tough. I think that's why we haven't seen the group, Republicans and Democrats sort of get the benefit from not being purely ideological and principled, and they can kind of move around. But libertarianism is a thing, So what do you think like, what is the goal or purpose of the LP? Like, would you be trying to convert libertarians, convert people into libertarianism, or is it just to get people anywhere to vote for the Libertarian Party in order to win elections or to send a message?
Well, they're not voting for us because they're not in sympathy with our views. I think they're not in sympathy with our views because since 1913, progressivism, small p, has been the default ideology of the country, and it's taught in the schools. It's in the air we breathe. People, it's funny because I'm a peak boomer, and people are constantly bashing the boomers for the flaws in the country. And I don't mind boomer jokes; they could be pretty funny, but you know, my grandparents were not old enough to vote for Woodrow Wilson, and that's when this crap started. It started in 1913. So it's important to understand what progressivism is. Progressivism, as I talk about in my book, it's a form of therapy. It's an ideology that makes no sense at all, and so you kind of have to understand what you're dealing with when you're talking to a progressive. That you're not talking to somebody about logic and reason and facts. You're interrupting their therapy session. That's why they get angry at you. The reason I wrote the book, by the way, is I observed this behavior over decades, and I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out. But so we kind of do have to go out and convert libertarians and people into being libertarians. And one of the problems with that is this word libertarian. After 50 years, I don't think people really understand what it means. And worse than that, people don't understand that the popular concept of libertarianism is that it started out as an Ayn Rand cult in the 1960s. And it's a bunch of wackos supported by the Koch brothers. And the truth of the matter is, libertarian, and it has never accomplished anything. The truth of the matter is totally the opposite. Libertarianism is a very old movement. It started in 1646. No later than that, maybe a bit earlier, but certainly 1646 in England. And it's accomplished a long list of absolutely amazing things, and nobody knows it, which is why I want to have a Libertarian Hall of Fame, a brick and mortar Hall of Fame, because we could put all these giants in there. Wilberforce, who ended slavery, now not technically a libertarian, but if you end slavery, I think you deserve a little place in the Libertarian Hall of Fame. H.L. Mencken, Henry David Thoreau. People are going to say, I didn't know Thoreau was a libertarian. Well, you do now, because you just walked through the Libertarian Hall of Fame. I didn't know H.L. Mencken, America's greatest journalist ever, was a libertarian. Yes, he was. So I think that's part of the problem. Libertarianism is a neologism, and people don't, it has no connection to history whatsoever. And the party and the movement have essentially not dealt with this issue. I'm going to deal with it. I want to have a Libertarian Hall of Fame in Philadelphia in the historical district, and put all these great libertarian heroes in there, teach people about all the great accomplishments. The First Amendment, one of the things I throw at the leftists is, the libertarians never accept the free speech that you're exercising now. Free speech is arguably, I think, a libertarian accomplishment. Specifically, Jefferson was out of the country, and he told, we need a Bill of Rights with free speech in there. Madison put it in there. Madison did what Jefferson told him to do most of the time. So why don't we take credit for these things? And some of these things, like the right to bear arms, I don't think libertarians sort of discovered that or originated it, but we've certainly been the strongest proponents of it throughout history. So we could take credit for that. Anti-slavery, I think we get a piece of that. Not other people participated who aren't libertarian. So a long list, and the list is in Progressivism, a primer, and I'm sure other scholars could add to that list. We need to, I said to the Hudson Valley people, liberty is the greatest political idea in human history. We have the worst marketing and the worst strategy. But can we fix those problems? That's what
it's public choice theory. All the statists have their own pet projects, and all the rent seekers, use statist ideology to get their way, and just take the public school teachers unions and all that stuff. I would add like William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, Tom Paine. Previous guest on the show, Dave Benner, wrote a great biography of Tom Paine, which I helped him edit, and it's a great book. I'd read 3 books about Tom Paine anyway, and there's stuff in Dave's book that I did not know, including one story in particular of how Thomas Paine escaped death by the hair of his chinny chin chin in the French Revolution, which is pretty great.
I want to read that. He's a Facebook friend of mine. There's I'm trying to think of I'm going to blank out on his name, and I'm blanking out on his name, but he's mentioned in Progressivism, an English dude who wrote the book explaining that the people have the right of revolution. And the king read the book and had him executed. I think he deserves some credit. I mean, I really do, because that's the basis that that was the theory that Jefferson used to write the Declaration of Independence, which originated in the country.
Yeah, maybe John Locke talked about some of that stuff, but I don't think he got executed for it. I can't think of who you're thinking of, but so tell us, and we got a few minutes left here. How do we get from here to there as far as if people want to support your campaign for LNC chair?
Yeah, well, kind of new to this, but I am going to, I want to travel around the country. I'm a working class lawyer. I'm not a man of means. I'm probably going to form a committee. My understanding is I don't have to file with the FEC or the New York State Board of Elections, but I'll probably put together a small fundraising effort so I can travel around the country. I plan to go out West Coast. I don't like flying. I like driving. The northern route, get to California, come back the southern route, check out separate trips, check out New England, Florida, Texas, and so on. And just what I'm trying to do is arrange to speak at the state conventions. If I don't know, if they don't want me to speak, I'll go anyway and maybe run a booth. I've been working on the Florida and North Carolina. I think there's a debate in North Carolina. So what I want to do is I'm putting my platform out there. It's on Twitter and Facebook, and some of it's on TikTok. It's very specific bullet points. And I have a podcast, a walking podcast where I've talked about these ideas in greater detail. That's on YouTube and Facebook. And then traveling to the state conventions in the next few months, as many as will have me or as many as I can get to. And then anybody who wants to contact me with questions or whatever, and who wants to meet with me, obviously the closest they are to Buffalo. But I like to travel. I mean, I'll be traveling around the country, just explaining my platform. And again, I'm not going to trash anybody. I really don't even know the other people. I'm running a campaign of ideas and positive ideas. And, I think it is fair to compare resumes. I believe it or not, I've been in politics for 55 years. I count these things because I'm a stat guy. I've been a lawyer for 42 years. I'm an election lawyer. I've been a political consultant. I've run for office. I've written policy studies, peer-reviewed studies. And, that doesn't mean I should be the chair. But, I think it's fair to look at the background and experience of somebody, and then, just the sheer longevity. I mean, I don't think anybody can really kind of wonder where's this guy coming from. I mean, I was taught by Rothbard economics, so I'm about as hardcore as you could possibly get. I've really devoted a lot of the time I should have spent on my law practice to the liberty movement. And I'm not complaining. I did it on purpose. But so I don't think people can question my background or sincerity. But I think it's mainly take my bullet points as explained in more detail in my podcasts and books, and just compare them to the other candidates and vote for the candidate you think is going to get us out of this rut that we've been in for 50 years.
Tennessee convention, I think, is April 11th through 13th, something in Chattanooga.
Cool.
My boy Rich Leach is probably listening to this, so
cool.
I'll hook you up with our Tennessee people. I can't make I'm not on their board or anything, but I'm sure we would love to have you in some capacity. So I'll keep.
You stole my idea. I was about to say that I would hook him up with my Tennessee people.
Well, yeah, well, we all know the same people. We're the same Tennessee Mises Caucus Mafia. So,
special.
Anything else?
I'm very special connection to Tennessee. I'm down there often. My good friend, who unfortunately succumbed to cancer, was a track star at East Tennessee. I've been down to Johnson City many times, and I was at the Tennessee Firearms. I think they're about a year and a half ago selling books. Met their president. Want to work with them on this constitutional carry issue.
Well, and if you're ever by Knoxville, I know Johnson City's 90 minutes away or whatever, but stop by and we'll catch up. Nate, do you have anything else? Any other thoughts, questions before we say goodbye to Jim?
The last thing I had before we got into finding all that was just I love what you said about how terrible the Libertarian Party's marketing is, or libertarians in general. And you've got me, like, as we're closing out, looking at different frameworks like the story brand marketing framework and stuff like that. And libertarians really do need to find a way to message this in a real marketing style. Like, there's a pain point. The Galdern government, U.S. government, local government, whatever, there's a pain point. There's a problem. And we ought to be able to work something out here where we can talk to regular people about how what the solutions to these problems are, and that it's not more government, and I don't think it's as complicated as everyone has made it out to be. So that's just the last thing I had.
I try to what I try to focus on. I try to get everything down to an elevator pitch. Now that people, or write it on the back of a business card. I think, it's complicated to figure this stuff out, but at the end, you should be able to distill it down to some wisdom that you can pass along to people. And then if they want to pursue it more, they can, what book should I read, or this or that, or what online? But some of the stuff can be condensed. I'm working on this book now. Government takes 80% of the income you produce. That could be put on a bumper sticker. In fact, I want to put it on a bumper sticker if I'm like to share.
Cool. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Been great.
We will I'm sure have you back on, and if there's maybe a forum discussion with other candidates for, I haven't heard of any other chair candidates whom we're predisposed to liking, but if we have treasurer or vice chair candidates or things like that, or you form kind of a get a slate together, we'll entertain that. A couple housekeeping notes. I'm not sure if we're going to get another episode in the end of the year here. I've got an idea. We might be able to, but I do have, I talked to Scott Horton, email back and forth here lately, and he's going to come on in January. Got some other people, big names, and hopefully some names that are kind of big, but you don't know about in sort of the liberty movement yet. We're working on that. So if we don't see you before Christmas and New Year's, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. But we might see it. And Jim, I envy, I'm thankful for anybody who's willing to do the dirty work in politics. And I can't think of a dirtier job than becoming LNC chair. So I thank you for your courage and willingness to help out with that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
Okay, see ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.